I had thought my life was going pretty well until I talked to my grandmother, and she said, Ritij, I know it's been hard for you to find a husband, so maybe it's time you talk to God. And I was like, damn, Nani, that's really harsh. Like, my love life's so bad I need divine intervention. And she's like, no, sometimes when a girl's marriage is late, they need to talk to Lord Shiva. And I'm like, Lord Shiva, the god of destruction? Lord Shiva? And she's like, yeah, he's a very good husband. So if you fast on Mondays, he will help you find somebody. I'm like, oh, okay, so my marriage was late. Apparently it was stuck in a traffic jam while I was trying to be an adult and trying to get a career. So now I gotta talk to God. But maybe she had a point. I hadn't met anybody in a really long time. I hadn't been in a relationship in years. And okay, maybe I did need God's help. So I also kind of figured this might be a way for me to connect to my grandmother, but I was like, is God gonna listen to me? Because first of all, I really like food and I'm not sure if I wanna give that up for a man. But the other thing was, I'm actually not Hindu. So is Shiva gonna take my calls? I don't know. But I looked at my grandmother's hopeful face and I figured, let me try. And I tried. So I went, to work on Monday morning, feeling, really confident this is gonna work, and feeling really morally superior when I walked by the break room donuts, like, no donuts for me, because Shiva's gotta find me a man. So I'm feeling really good about myself until about lunchtime when my growling stomach started interrupting meetings. And then by the end of the day, my coworkers were protecting their food and backing away from me slowly because of very legitimate reasons. So I left work and I actually went to bed around 8 p.m. that night just so I could wake up the next day and eat some food. But the weird thing is it worked, because within a few weeks I met a guy, and he was a pretty good-looking guy with a good career. He worked as a White House reporter. And in our second date, we went to a restaurant. We were arm wrestling, because you do on a second date. And I beat him a couple times, and then all of a sudden out of nowhere, he beat me hardcore, and I was like, whoa, wait a second, I'm not sure how I'm supposed to feel about the fact that you just kicked my ass. And he looked me in the eye and he said, aroused? And he was right. And I was like, this is gonna be such a great story to tell our grandkids. This is great. Okay, so he wasn't very nice to waiters and he yelled at staplers and things, but I was like, this is the guy that Shiva wants for me, right? So one day he texted me and he said, he couldn't make it to dinner because he had to work late at the White House. So I texted him back and I said, that's fine, I'm just gonna go hit the gym then. And he said, so you're not gonna stay at home and text me tonight? And I said, well, I love texting with you, but you're gonna be working anyway, right? So I'm just gonna go to the gym? And he wrote back, you don't understand the media. I want my Firefly DVDs back. And I was like, oh, okay. So the next day I mailed him his Firefly DVDs and we never spoke to each other again. I'm like, Shiva, so this was not the guy, right? Apparently, this is not the person. I fasted, but was I just confused because I was hungry and I wanted to start eating again? So I started dating the wrong guy? I don't get it. So I regrouped with my grandmother, and the thing is, despite the fact that my grandmother's very religious, she also has a PhD, and she's very, very smart, very independent, and she was just trying to give me her best advice, advice that was no worse than what I had read in books, wait 3 days before you text a guy, or make a focus group out of your ex-boyfriends. So I go back to her, and I'm like, Nani, that didn't work. What am I doing wrong here? I don't understand. Ritija, it is going to take some time, okay? So just be patient. And I'm like, yeah, so I looked this up online, this whole fast, and it said that I might have to fast for 16 Mondays. That's a lot of Mondays for a guy. That's a lot. And she said, I don't know, but if you want to speed it up, maybe what you should do is wear yellow, because yellow is Lord Shiva's favorite color. And I just don't have it in my heart to ask her how she knows that Shiva loves yellow. But I'm like, all right, I'm gonna do it. I'll do it, that's fine. So Monday, I went to work with my ugliest yellow sweater on so that there was no chance that Shiva mistook it for an accident. I wanted him to know, this is for you. This is your yellow sweater. can we close a deal here, please? I'm hungry. And a few weeks later, I met another guy, and this guy was a lawyer, and he just seemed like he really wanted to settle down, and I really liked the fact that he seemed very serious. But he was like really serious and really sensitive. Like he had this real sense of justice, and like we'd play Settlers of Catan with his friends, and like if one of his friends wouldn't trade him weed, like on the car ride home, he'd be like, I can't believe Ken didn't trade me the weed. It's like I don't even know him. Okay? Or like we'd have conversations if I didn't recycle properly, and he'd make me feel like I was like strangling a bottlenose dolphin right in front of him. And when we texted, he would use like brown emojis, like brown thumbs up, and I'm like, is that brown for you or for me? Because you're white. So I appreciated the fact that he had this sense of justice and like social responsibility, but I also felt like I was dating Batman, where like I was glad that he was a do-gooder, but like he was not somebody I could take to karaoke or to a family reunion. And I finally figured, look, I'm not really good at being human Prozac, and I wrote to him saying, I don't think I can make you happy. So, okay, Shiva, 2 for 2. So that's not working. I'm wearing yellow. Yellow does not look good on me. I'm not really sure what you want me to do here. And I was just really frustrated, and I went back to my Nani, and I was like, Nani, what am I doing? I don't understand. Can I chant for Shiva? I'll just chant, and I'll eat some food like a normal person on Monday, but I'll chant. My Nani said, Ritija, you sound hungry. What you need to do is you need to eat more on your fast. And I'm like, that's a really interesting concept. What do you mean, eat more on my fast? And she said, well, eat some yellow food because Lord Shiva loves yellow. And I'm like, all right, so beside bananas, what am I eating? Oh, you're eating lentils and squash and pumpkin pie. And I'm like, brr? Pumpkin pie? What? How is pumpkin pie on the menu? All right, you don't have to tell me twice. Shiva, I'm gonna eat some pumpkin pie for you. We're gonna do this. So I eat some pumpkin pie for a couple of weeks. And I meet another guy, and I'm like, this is really this system. This is incredible. And he's this really adorable guy. He's an editor at an academic journal. He's like really adorable. We both love the same cartoons. And we start dating, and on Thanksgiving, he introduces me to his family. And he and his cousins are playing ping pong, and I'm just kind of on my phone. And out of nowhere, a ping pong ball just goes flying at my face. And like a ninja, he just swats it down to protect me. And in that moment, I realized I was in love with him. He had saved me from a ping pong ball to my face. And later that night, we ended up making out in the backseat of a car. And I remember feeling like this love was a better love because I had really earned it. And I felt like Lord Shiva was giving me a high five, which was like beautiful and creepy. I told my grandmother about him, and I went to Chicago for our anniversary trip, and I got there a couple days before him. And my Nani said, Ritija, I'm so glad you found somebody that you love. I can't wait to meet him. You know what? I would like to give him a gift. Either I can give him some laddu, or I can give him $1,000. And I'm like, Nani, don't give him $1,000. That's really weird. Why would you? We're not engaged. Why would you do that? Give me $1,000. And he'll be happy with the dessert. It's gonna be fine. So she did that, and very happy to say, and she loved him. She just loved him. A few weeks later, we decided to move in together, which was huge. I'd never moved in with anybody before, and we were looking at furniture that he could bring to my small studio apartment, and we go to IKEA, and he's looking at these desks, and he looks at this one desk that's like the size of a grand piano, and I'm like, oh, honey, I feel like that's not gonna fit in my 400 square foot studio, but babe, I need my gaming desktop, and okay, yeah, but you also have your drum kit and your books and all this other stuff, so where are we gonna put it? Oh, well, I was actually gonna keep my apartment. oh, so you're gonna take over my space and also keep your apartment. Teacher, I didn't think I was taking over your space. We hadn't talked it out. We were rushing into this. We didn't have the same values. We just realized that we were moving way too fast. And like so many relationships before, ours was chewed up and spit out like a Swedish meatball at the IKEA. It turns out that IKEA was a Nordic god stronger than even the Hindu Lord of Destruction. So I was basically done with Shiva. I was like, I don't want to talk to you anymore. I started eating steak on Mondays. I don't even like steak, but I wanted to prove a point. I was like, we're not talking right now. We're not talking right now. But even though I was really devastated, I was really heartbroken, I was even more worried about how my grandmother would take it because she'd met him and she really liked him. And so I called her up and I said, Nani, I'm really sorry. I have to tell you this. James and I broke up. We're not going to get back together. And if we could just not talk about it, I'd appreciate it. But don't worry, I'm going to find your grandson-in-law. It's going to happen. And my Nani said, Ritija, I don't need a grandson-in-law. I just want you to be happy because Nani loved to see you happy and Nani loves you. I've had a lot of conversations with her since then about what Shiva should and shouldn't, how he should be catered to. We're on speaking terms again. And I wish, now that my grandmother has passed away, I wish that I still had her to talk to ask her if a margarita counts as yellow food. But even though I don't know if Shiv is actually gonna help me find my husband, I do still fast occasionally on Mondays because when I do, it reminds me of my grandmother and the fact that she believed that I deserve love. Thanks.
I was 11. My mom sat me down and she took my hand and she said, for 1 year, the two of us are moving from Massachusetts to North Carolina. And my mother was a professor at Williams College, and she had just become a famous feminist scholar. But you probably never heard of her because she could only earn 72% of the fame of a male professor. And earlier that year, on April Fool's Day, my father died of a heart attack. And when you're a child, April Fool's Day is the absolute worst holiday to lose a loved one. Because when you tell people, they don't believe you. So it was a rough year, and my mom wanted to take a break, so she decided to take a 1-year sabbatical to Davidson College in North Carolina. Just wait. And she promised that at the end of 1 year, we'd move back home. And I have to confess, it wasn't easy being a fat, whiny Chinese kid with a Massachusetts accent in North Carolina who said shit like, the correct pronunciation is Appalachian. Like the other kids were having mini strokes because they didn't know what to make fun of first. And I didn't know much about the South or how religious they were, Early in the school year, my 6th grade teacher had everyone go around the room and tell everyone else their religion, because that's a great idea. Probably just a way to ferret out the Jews. But when it was my turn, I stood up and said, I'm an atheist. And another kid asked, what's an atheist? And I said, well, it means I don't believe in God, and I think it's stupid that you do. No one would be my friend after that. And I didn't care because I hated all the other kids. And I knew I just had to survive 1 year around these backwater hicks, and then I get to move back to my real friends. But to top it all off, my mom started going on dates with men. And so most nights I had to be alone. So I'd just make myself a bowl of mac and cheese and watch MTV and hope a Paul Abdul music video would come on so I could hump the sofa cushions and call it a night. But it was around then that Julia transferred into my class. Julia wasn't like the other kids at school. She had big, bushy, unkempt hair and thick, geeky glasses and blue jeans covered in flowers made of puff paint. And her mouth was filled with rubber bands and braces. She was stunning. One day in the cafeteria, I asked her where she was from, and she said, "I'm from Hawaii. I want to move back there with my mom, but my dad has custody, and he got a job at Davidson, so I had to move here." And then she said something that made my heart skip a beat. "I hate all the kids in this school." Oh, we had so much in common. And like me, she wanted to escape, but poor Julia was doomed to stay in North Carolina, and I was destined to return to Massachusetts. And when the last day of school finally arrived, right before the bell rang for summer break, I made an announcement to the entire class. I stood up and said, "This will be the last time any of you ever see me. And I just want you inbred rednecks to know. I want you to know that no matter how much you didn't like me, I pity you. Because I get to leave, and you have to stay here for the rest of your lives." But a few days later, my mom sat me down, and she took my hand, and she said, "I just got offered a permanent job at Davidson, and North Carolina is going to be our forever home." Well, Mother, that would have been useful information before committing social suicide. And she betrayed me. And that summer, I was moping across the college campus when I saw Julia. And she was shooting college students with water guns and then running away. And she saw me and she gave me one and she said, "Let's get him." So we hung out that day and the day after that, and most of the days that summer. We'd go to the library and read a book or go to the student union and get a snack. She taught me how to make friendship bracelets. After a while, I got a phone call from Julia's dad, and he said, "John, I'd like to get to know you better. Julia tells me that you two are getting along, and that makes me very, very happy. But I want to know what it is about you that makes you tick." Oh, it was so weird. And he kept calling routinely until I kind of figured it out. I was like, Julia must have a crush on me. And she told her dad, and now he's checking up on me. And, I never had a girlfriend before. But if Julia would be my girlfriend, then I wouldn't have to worry about the other kids at school. I could just start a new life for myself. And then, near the very end of the summer, Julia and I were walking back to my house. And we were right across the street from my place. And we were standing under these giant magnolia trees when this burst of wind came rushing past us. And it was so strong, we had to hold on to each other. And leaves were blowing all around us. And when it finally died down, Julia looked me in the eye, and she kissed me on the cheek. And I had never been kissed before. It was like time stopped, and I knew I had a girlfriend. And as we walked across the street, Julia held my hand. And it was such a small thing, but my heart was racing because it was the first time in my entire life I'd ever felt that rush that you only get when somebody likes you and you like them back. And Julia held my hand for the entire 75-yard walk back to my front door. But when we got inside, we encountered this bizarre scene. My mother was sitting at the dining room table, and Julia's father was in front of her on one knee. And when he saw us, he stood up and said, "Oh, how wonderful that we could all share this together. I've just asked John's mom to marry me." It was my worst nightmare because I immediately realized I had only been living in the South for less than a year. And I was already in an incestuous relationship with my sister. Julia looked horrified. I felt her hand slip away. But it wasn't only awkward for us. My mom had to sit me down again, and she held my hand, and she said, "John, I don't want to marry Julia's dad. You see, sometimes mommies just want to be with a man, and then for that man to just go away." But this isn't only a story about the most convoluted mother-son cockblock in history. There's another twist. A few days later, I was walking by Julia's house and there were moving trucks in their driveway. And I saw Julia's dad, but Julia wouldn't come out to say goodbye. Turns out, Julia's dad was in the same department as my mom, and he'd just taken a new job that opened up at Williams College in Massachusetts. Oh yeah. Julia ended up going to my old school, hanging out with my old friends, and she went on to become a very successful artist. Meanwhile, John spent his adolescence in North Carolina, and it did not go good. It would be almost another decade before I had another girlfriend. That kiss that Julia gave me had to sustain me for years. And through all the darkest days of my puberty, worrying that I'd be a virgin for the rest of my life, or wondering if it means I'm gay if girls don't like me, all I had to get me through was this tiny little memory of when I once had a girlfriend for 75 yards. But it turns out it was just enough, because a few years later, in Davidson, North Carolina, I met my wife, and we've been together for the last 15 years. She deserves a little bit more than that. It's been very difficult. But I'd just like to say, Julia, wherever you are, I want to thank you for that small kindness. And I hope that if you haven't found love, that it helps to know that there was someone who once cared for you very much. And although fate cruelly pulled us apart, I would have been honored to have you as a girlfriend or a sister or both.
So I walk up to the door, knock, and then immediately regret it. So there I am, checking my reflection in the glass, my beautiful 19-year-old face, just nervous because I didn't know if this was a date or not. According to April, we're just going to hang out. So of course I put on my nicest baggy clothes because it was the early 2000s. Got a fresh haircut and brushed my teeth for 11 minutes straight. Because even though I didn't know if it was a date or not, I showed up prepared. The door opens and there's April, and she smiles, and it immediately washes away all my nervous energy. We platonically hug, and I go, "Hey, April, where are your parents so I can say hello?" She says, "They're not home." This is a date, right? But why is it a date now? See, we've hung out for the last 2 years, but always in groups, never alone. What's different? So I go, "Hey, April, what do you want to get up to?" And she goes, "How about we go to my basement and watch a movie?" It's a date. This is a date. There's no other way. But how did I get out of the friend zone? You know? I was in love with her. 19-year-old love, that irresponsible love. I said, just play it cool. We head down to the basement, and everything was white. The walls, the carpet, all the furniture, the couch, it was all white. It was like I was walking into heaven. April starts going through the movies, and she's like, "Hey, have you ever seen this movie, Signs? It's really good. It's a scary movie." And I go, "No, but I love scary movies." Because I knew scary movies lead to sexy time. Even in scary movies, they watch scary movies to initiate sexy time. You know, she grabs your arm and you flex a little, show her you're strong. Then I start looking at the box and I notice there are crop circles on it. And I'm like, "Hey, April, is this movie about aliens?" She's like, yeah, it's super good. And I'm like, I have a confession to make. I don't believe in ghosts or monsters aren't real, but mathematically speaking, there has to be life on other planets, so I'm particularly scared about movies about aliens. When I was 5 and everybody was watching E.T., and everyone thought it was an action adventure, and I was trying not to cry. And she goes, "We are 100% gonna watch this movie now." She goes upstairs to make popcorn. When she comes back down, she could have sat on the love seat while I sat on the couch. But she sat on the couch too, with enough room for Jesus. The movie starts, and I begin to freak the fuck out. I have never been this scared in the afternoon. It's 2 p.m., the light is coming in, birds are chirping, and I'm screaming. And she's laughing harder than I've ever heard, which sucks. But then she would playfully touch me, which doesn't suck. But I'm like, is this friend touch? Is this sexy touch? Should I be making a move? Is this even a date? I still don't know. At one point, I flinched so hard that I spilled popcorn all over the white carpet and couch. And while she goes to make more, I have to give myself a pep talk. I'm like, dude, get your shit together. There's no woman going, you know what I want in a man? Absolute terror. She comes back down, sits on the couch, this time a little bit closer, like a very slim Jesus. And then she puts her hand on my thigh, and my body is on fire. But then she smiles, and I immediately calm down. And she's this close to my face, and she goes, Angel, I am having the best time. And I'm like, she's gonna kiss me. It's about to happen, finally. What's taking so long? Is she waiting for me? And then she just turns the movie back on, and I'm like, I fucked it up. That was my shot, that was my chance. I've ruined it. And then a news reporter comes on the movie and says, we have found footage of the alien. And she says the worst thing a newscaster can say, which is, the following footage may be disturbing. And then it shows some kid's birthday party in a country where I don't understand the language. And all the kids are pointing at different directions where they think the alien is. And I'm watching the movie doing this, trying to see where the alien is. And then the character in the movie also doing this, trying to see where the alien is. And all the alien does is take a step and a half and disappear. And my response was, ah! I physically tried to move away from the TV, which flipped me over backwards on the couch, popcorn everywhere. And as I'm sitting there, horrified, screaming in terror, she's laughing harder than I've ever heard any human being laugh. And after the fear dissipates, I'm left with a feeling of failure, because there's no way that anything's gonna happen after that. And I stand up, I brush popcorn off of me. And she's still laughing. But she's bent over laughing and making no noise, just the veins in her neck. And then she's trying to talk to me, but I can't understand a word because she's still laughing. She's like, And I just kind of wish a hole formed under me and just swallowed me into the earth. This is the last place I want to be. And then finally, I could understand what she was saying, and she goes, I peed my pants. And then she stands up, and there's a giant wet spot in her jeans. Not the good wet, the bad wet. And that was the end of our evening. We went our separate ways, and I never saw her again. Until maybe 7 or 8 months ago, I ran into her, and she smiled, but I was still nervous. And I said, April, I just have to know, was it a date? And she goes, yeah. Thank you very much. Have a good night.